My name was Michael Harrington, and in 1994, I was 28 years old, a junior trader at one of the most aggressive brokerage firms on Wall Street. Back then, the suits were sharper, the phones never stopped ringing, and the air smelled like adrenaline, burnt coffee, and expensive cologne. The trading floor wasn't just a workplace, it was a battlefield. Every desk was a foxhole, every trader a soldier armed with nothing but a phone, a Bloomberg terminal, and the ability to stay calm while millions moved in seconds. I didn't come from money. My father ran a modest hardware store in Queens. My mother taught math at the local high school. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I fought my way in through the back door, an unpaid internship, nights spent cleaning up data sheets for traders who didn't know my name. By '94, I'd learned the most important truth about Wall Street. Your worth wasn't measured in degrees or titles. It was measured in how much money you could make before the closing bell. And that's where my story begins. One October week in 1994 that changed everything. It was a Monday morning when it happened. I was still sipping my second cup of coffee, watching the open, when Eddie Numbers Malone slid by my desk. Malone was a legend in the building. Mid-50s, steel gray hair slicked back, a pinstripe suit that looked like it had been cut from the 1980s and refused to leave. He leaned close enough for me to smell the menthols on his breath. "Mike," he said quietly, "Tektron is gonna pop, triple-digit gain by Friday, but you didn't hear it from me." Tektron wasn't a name most analysts cared about, a mid-sized electronics firm making circuit boards for office machines. But Malone had a reputation for knowing things before they hit the street. He'd survived the '87 crash, made a killing during the early '90s recession, and never once looked rattled. If he said a stock was going to run, you listened. The problem was, I didn't have much capital. My personal account was small, and I wasn't allowed to touch firm resources for my own trades. But something in my gut said this was my shot, the one big move that could change my life. By Tuesday morning, the whisper in my head had turned into a roar. Every tick of the clock felt like a wasted opportunity. I tried to focus on my actual work, handling client calls, monitoring blue-chip stocks for my senior trader. But every time my eyes drifted to the side of the screen, Tektron's ticker was there, blinking like it knew my name. Malone's words replayed over and over. Triple-digit gain by Friday. In the '90s, information didn't spread like it does now. There was no Twitter feed to ruin a rumor in 30 seconds. Back then, a whisper from the right mouth could move millions, and Malone's mouth had moved more millions than I'd ever see in a lifetime. I ran the numbers in my head, over and over. If Tektron hit even half of what he said, I could triple my money in days. I could finally move out of my shoebox apartment above the laundromat, maybe even get out from the constant pressure of proving myself. But the truth was, I didn't have the kind of money this opportunity demanded. My personal account was a joke, a few thousand I'd been too cautious to touch. So I made the first reckless decision. I called my sister and convinced her to buy my Nissan 300ZX. I told her it was a family discount, but in reality, I sold it for thousands below market just to get cash fast. Next, I went to the bank, closed out my savings account, and watched the teller count out the bills with a curious look, like she knew I wasn't about to do something sensible. Still not enough. That's when I thought about Vic. Everyone on the trading floor had a Vic back then, a guy you could borrow from, in cash, no paperwork, no questions. The kind of guy who didn't send reminders, he sent people. I met him at O'Malley's bar that night. He was in his usual spot near the back, playing cards with a couple of other guys whose eyes never stopped scanning the room. I slid into the booth, and before I could even ask, he smirked. "How much you need?" "20, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He raised an eyebrow. "That's not beer money." "It's a short-term play," I lied, even though I didn't know how short-term it might be. He leaned back, studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "End of the month, no later. And if you don't have it," He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. By Wednesday morning, the money was in my account, and I went all in. The trade ticket felt heavier than paper should. My fingers hesitated for a second over the keyboard before I hit buy. Thousands of shares, one company, one bet. At first, it felt like magic. The ticker ticked upward, plus 1%, plus 3, plus 5. My heart synced with every green flash. Every uptick felt like a personal victory over the market itself. By Thursday morning, Tektron was up 12%. I was up more money in 2 days than I'd made in the past year. My mind raced ahead of reality. A new apartment in Manhattan, paying off my parents' mortgage, walking into my boss's office to quit on my own terms. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and I had no idea that within 24 hours, the entire bet would turn on me like a rabid dog. It happened so fast, I almost missed it. Thursday afternoon, the trading floor was electric. Phones slammed into cradles, printers spat out order slips. The air was a mix of coffee, sweat, and the faint ozone smell of overheating monitors. The constant hum of voices was punctuated by sudden shouts when someone landed a big trade. I was in my zone, eyes darting between Tektron's ticker and the order book, when I saw it. Halt. The letters weren't red like in some dramatic movie scene. They were plain white on a gray background, almost boring in their appearance. But to a trader, those 4 letters were a gunshot in a quiet room. My stomach dropped. I hit the desk intercom. "Hey, what's going on with TCTR?" Nobody had a straight answer. One guy said a block trade had triggered an automatic halt. Another whispered that the SEC had been sniffing around the company all week. Then the rumor mill kicked into high gear. Someone claimed Tektron's CEO had been caught falsifying sales reports. Another swore the company's main factory had been shut down by federal inspectors. Somebody else muttered, "insider trading probe," and that phrase spread across the floor like fire in dry grass. The noise got louder. Traders began shouting across the room. Phones rang unanswered. A few guys actually laughed, probably the ones who had shorted the stock. I tried calling Malone. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my temples. The halt wasn't just a pause. It was a coffin lid slamming shut. My money was trapped. The stock could reopen at any price, and there was nothing I could do to protect myself. Every tick of the clock felt like a punch to the ribs. At 3:17, an internal firm memo hit the wire. The SEC is investigating unusual trading activity in Tektron stock. Trading is suspended pending review. Translation: they suspected someone knew something they shouldn't have, and every recent trade, including mine, was now under a microscope. That was when my palms went cold. If they thought I had insider info, I could be more than broke. I could be finished. Career over, reputation gone, maybe even legal trouble. And all I could do was sit there, staring at those 4 letters, halt, while the rest of the floor kept moving, as if my life hadn't just frozen solid. I was halfway down the marble steps of 45 Broad Street, cardboard box in my arms, when my phone buzzed. The October air outside was sharp, the kind that stings your lungs and makes you feel alive, if you're not dead inside like I was at that moment. I set the box on the stone railing, fished the phone from my pocket, and saw the name on the screen, Malone. For a split second, I considered letting it ring out, but curiosity won. "You still holding?" His voice was calm, almost cheerful, like we were just chatting over coffee. I barked out a laugh that didn't sound like me. "No, Malone, I'm not holding. I sold. I'm broke, and I'm fired in case you were wondering. Where the hell were you when the SEC froze the stock?" There was a pause, long enough for me to hear traffic horns in the distance. He finally said, "You might want to check the ticker, kid." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. I turned slowly toward the lobby of the building next door. There was a giant TV mounted high on the wall, permanently tuned to CNBC. A few pedestrians stood around watching. And there it was, crawling across the screen. Tektron plus 120. A headline followed. Tektron secures $500 million Defense Department contract for advanced circuit systems. For a moment, the world narrowed to just that ticker. My breath caught in my throat. My legs felt like someone had yanked the bones out of them. The pedestrians around me were murmuring, some smiling, some shaking their heads. I stood there like a statue, my cardboard box slipping from my hands, spilling my career across the sidewalk. Framed certificates, a cracked coffee mug, a photo of my parents at Coney Island. In my pocket, Malone was still talking. Told you, triple digits by Friday. But I wasn't listening anymore. My pulse was roaring in my ears. My mind played the cruelest film reel imaginable. Me calling Vic to tell him I'd pay him back in cash today. Me walking into my boss's office not to get fired, but to resign. Me wiring a down payment on a loft in Soho. And then, like a gut punch, the realization I hadn't just lost a fortune, I had thrown it away with my own hands. 2 more hours. That was all I would have needed. 2 hours of holding my nerve. Instead, I had folded. I hung up without saying goodbye. I wish I could tell you I bounced back fast, that I dusted myself off, jumped into another job, and climbed my way back to the top. But life after a loss like that isn't some upbeat Wall Street comeback montage. It's slow, humiliating, and suffocating. The Monday after Tektron, I was no longer Michael Harrington, the young trader with potential. I was just the kid who blew himself up. News travels fast on the street, and bad news travels at light speed. Nobody wanted to hire a guy whose name had been mentioned in the same breath as an SEC probe, even if I hadn't done anything illegal. I moved out of my tiny Queens apartment because I couldn't make rent. Ended up in a sublet above a diner in Brooklyn, 3 rooms, one of which was barely big enough for the mattress on the floor. Vic didn't care about my sob story. On the 1st of every month, I'd meet him at O'Malley's with an envelope. If I was even a day late, he'd lean in close and remind me that I was still on his calendar. I picked up whatever work I could find, answering phones at a freight company, delivering packages for a printing press, even unloading trucks at 3 a.m. Every time I saw the CNBC ticker in a diner or bar, my chest tightened. Tektron kept climbing for months. By spring of '95, it had been bought out at triple the post-contract price. I stopped looking after that. Malone? Gone. No calls, no tips, no sightings on the trading floor. Some said he retired to a beach in Florida. Others claimed he'd skipped the country when the SEC started sniffing around. And there were a few whispers, just whispers, that maybe he'd been part of the very unusual trading activity that got Tektron halted in the first place. Sometimes I wonder, did he tell me about Tektron because he wanted to help me, or because he wanted someone else to take the fall if things went sideways? It's been years since that week in October 1994, but I still measure my life by it. There's before Tektron, when I thought I could outsmart the market, and after Tektron, when I learned the market doesn't care about you, your dreams, or your gut feelings. People think the street rewards intelligence. It doesn't. It rewards nerve, the ability to sit still while the world screams at you to move. That Friday, my nerve cracked before the market did. Even now, when I walk past the towering glass buildings downtown, I look up at the corner offices and wonder, if I'd just held for 2 more hours, would I be up there looking down? Or would the market have found another way to chew me up and spit me out? Because that's the thing about Wall Street in the 1990s. It didn't just eat the weak. It devoured anyone who hesitated. And I hesitated.